Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining this ISG Smart Talk. Today, we'll be discussing tips for negotiating and contracting with Oracle. Before we kick things off today, I will quickly run through some housekeeping notes for you. We are recording this webinar, and you can access the replay using the same link you used to register for this event. And please feel free to submit a question at any time during the presentation by using the Ask a Question box on the left side of your window. With that, I will hand things off to Bill Huber to kick off today's presentation.
Thank you, Jillian, and all of you, welcome and welcome to 2021. As you know, it is now Oracle season, so Oracle's fiscal year ends on May 31st, and this is, of course, when you will start seeing the largest volume of Oracle negotiations taking place in your environment, as well as along with many of your colleagues. So today is the first of two webinars we will be presenting in 2021 on negotiating with Oracle. My co-presenter is Yadu Singh. So my name is Bill Huber. I'm the Global Partner for Software Advisory with ISG. I'm based in Blacksburg, Virginia. Yadu is our EMEA lead for Software Advisory. He is based right off Canary Wharf in London. And we are looking forward to working with you today. The follow-on webinar, part 2 of this, will be on February 4th. So please put that in your calendar. And during the second part, we'll get into a deep dive on what are the best approaches to negotiate with Oracle. We'll touch on that a little bit today. But today, really, we want to do more to set the context of how do you position yourself to maximize your leverage with Oracle before the negotiations even begin. So let's set a little bit of context. If you think about the software majors or the digital majors, Oracle's performance has been, okay. They're not failing by any means, but they don't have quite the same momentum that some of their peers have. And whether you look at their stock performance, or if you look at their penetration into the cloud market, they're not where they'd like to be. So that's one of the things that Oracle is very sensitive to. They're going to try to figure out how to turn that around, how to gain a larger cloud footprint, gain more of your cloud business, and by doing so, drive their share price up. So, that's always going to be top in mind right now. It's a land grab for cloud presence, and Oracle is lagging behind and is trying to catch up. As you know,
sorry to cut you off real quick. I think your camera might be blocked or covered.
I see. Okay.
Just wanted to get that fixed.
Thank you, Jillian. Let me continue with this slide, and I'll fix it while after we switch over to Yadu.
Sounds good.
All right. Second point, Oracle's fiscal year end is May 31st, and Oracle will be trying to close deals to maximize their growth between now and then. So expect a lot of activity over the next few months with your Oracle reps. Thirdly, Oracle is important to you. They're still going to be very close to the top of your IT spend list, and probability is that your company may be spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars with Oracle this year, even though it's growth hasn't been as high. Oracle's products are diverse. They comprise ERPs, they comprise databases, they comprise a lot of analytic platforms, and they comprise a lot of industry-specific platforms. So they're going to continue to be a very important part of your landscape. So again, today's discussion is part 1 of 2. And in order to optimize your Oracle strategy, you need to, first of all, understand the context. Let me turn over to Yadu. Yadu?
Thank you, Bill. So folks, Bill alluded to the share price. The chart on your left compares the SAP share price over a 5-year period with the Oracle share price. The numbers speak for themselves. On the right-hand side, you see the cloud market share. And if you look at the pink portion, you will see that the market share that Oracle has is very, very limited. In fact, you have other majors, which are listed below, that are slowly but steadily increasing their market share. And of course, you have the big 3, be it Google, Amazon, or Microsoft Azure. That actually brings me to the analogy of old wine in a new bottle? Or is it new wine in a new bottle? So on the left-hand side, if you look, this was the picture pre-2017. And on the right-hand side of the slide is the picture today. The cloud suite evolution has been incremental. Oracle continues to maintain the same number of portfolio channels with merging of similar elements to make room for new elements. So a little bit of mixing wines together, putting them in a brand new bottle. You get a different taste, different flavor. The predominant channels of the portfolio remain unchanged, be it web, mobile, social, contact center, with the new channel being added, which is focused on IoT. The industry focus has evolved to include additional areas where CX adoption has increased: automotive, media, life sciences, and high tech. Some of the existing industry solutions have been demerged to improve focus. BFSI is now financial services, insurance. Public sector is now public sector and higher education. The CX foundation layer has evolved with changes reflecting market dynamics, as well as emerging technology adoption, such as APIs as a service model, as well as heightened focus on analytics and collaboration modules. This evolution depicts intense focus on leveraging data to enhance CX, ideally shifting towards a data-centric approach, right all the way from infrastructure to interface to external layers. The cloud apps also showcase a CX-specific marketplace and pricing-related apps to ensure thorough streamlining of enterprise needs. I'll still hold judgment: is this old wine in a new bottle, or new wine in a new bottle, or new wine in an old bottle? So the evolution has a number of positive elements, both for your application stakeholders and your infrastructure stakeholders. Let's look at Oracle Cloud applications. So they have certainly evolved. From being individual apps, it's now what we can truly call an integrated ecosystem of apps based on a data cloud. Business intelligence has been rebranded to business analytics and is available with other industry cloud apps. Enterprise performance management and customer experience are relatively newer cloud apps with enhancements focused on ease of use and varied data management capabilities. SCM, ERP, and other elements of sales and integration have witnessed updated improvements and enhancements and have evolved to include improved self-service features, reduced complexity, aided by data democratization across users, increased security features based on encryption, user access based on security roles and privileges, user interface enhancements aimed at delivering insightful and actionable information, improved reporting and analytics, features aiding revamped visualization, charts and graphs, connectors to facilitate data extraction, common technology and user experience. These are typical modules aimed at delivering Oracle's cloud user experience themes of simplicity, mobility, extensibility throughout the product suite. Now, that sounds like a pitch for Oracle. Bill mentioned that they will be there, pretty much as one of your top 2, top 3 software publishers, right? So you have to take notice of these guys. Now, from an infrastructure perspective, right? You have fast, scalable bare metal, virtual machines, GPU compute elements. These combine local SSD storage, file storage, block storage, as well as object and archive storage, enabling consistently fast storage performance across your workloads, including HPC, containers, Kubernetes, as well as all your enterprise applications. And very importantly, capability to handle dynamic workloads as well as mission-critical applications. So again, we hold the question, is this old wine in a new bottle? Certainly is a new bottle, but let's dig in deeper. Oracle's autonomous database combines the flexibility of cloud with the power of machine learning to deliver data management as a service. The autonomous database performs the functions of system administrators, automatically leveraging capabilities from machine learning from years of best practice followed by Oracle administrators. It also combines the inherent power of Oracle cloud infrastructure with Exadata database machines and Oracle's knowledge base offering a number of features, be it self-provisioning, self-repairing, which is automatically addressing failure events without user involvement, self-securing, self-managing, which is automatically carrying out space management, patching and upgrades, tuning, diagnosing errors, self-optimizing, self-scaling, which is instantly scale system resources to meet the needs of applications and business. This is no longer science fiction. Oracle and its SI partners have the ability to deliver these services to you, be it in North America or here in Europe. However, Oracle's SI partners have a slightly different agenda. Oracle's SI partners want very large implementation projects. Oracle wants subscription revenue. The SI partners want to have a project that is a 3-year, 5-year project so they can deploy thousands of colleagues to service and support your needs. So the focus now is AI, ML, IoT, blockchain being embedded in Oracle solutions and across the cloud apps that they offer. This allows Oracle and its SI partners to streamline and enhance your existing processes as well as deliver innovative products and services. Oracle's adaptive intelligent apps are integrated across the Oracle Cloud, making it a seamless, connected, intelligent enterprise powered by AI and ML. And what you see here is essentially the push for extending your existing internal IT to your supply chain, to your end users, and hence the strapline robots outside the enterprise. There's a lot of marketing dollars that Oracle is spending on this. They're spending a lot of money on the IoT push. They're working with their SI partners to make sure there's a lot of push of embedding Oracle products in sensors, in intelligent track and trace, which is a blockchain-based solution. So they want to be more omnipresent in your infrastructure. Aha. Right. So we have a lot of push towards Oracle. Their sales folks are fairly aggressive. The SI partners are fairly aggressive. You would think that, having an aggressive sales folk, a hungry salesperson, you might get a good deal. But there's a flip side to this. This is an incident that ISG has observed. And I repeat, this is our observation. Okay? Berry Johnson Associates is a healthcare consultancy, East Coast, USA. They were taken to court by Oracle with a fine of $3.2 million. Now, this story gets very, very interesting. PJ Associates is a transcription service provider. They are not even Oracle's direct customer. They used a product from a company called Arundel Associates, who had an Oracle embedded software license distribution agreement, ESLDA. Oracle is suing the customer's customer. Time to be very, very careful. So what happened? In one of the architecture sessions, let me just wait for the animation to work through, and I'll... Okay. And it catches up. Perfect. So in one of the architecture sessions that Arundel Associates had with Oracle, they mentioned about using Oracle products in the products and software and services they would sell to enterprise clients. Oracle salesperson did not say anything at that point in time, but he went back and calculated the licensing and support fees that PJA and Arundel should have paid was about 3.2 million. So this is, you're accessing a system which is used by somebody else and the license is with somebody else. The second aspect was Oracle was treating this as an enterprise user experience, whereas the actual usage was a lot lower. Now, the court stepped in and the court indicated to all parties the following. You cannot, as per the ESLDA, install or configure the Oracle software separately. You cannot access the database or schema directly. No rental, no hosting, no outsourcing. This is for your own internal business. Now, if you use any of the third-party software, it probably have the same sort of methodology, but this was public domain, and we felt it imperative that it was shared with you folks. So, from a perspective of legal T's and C's, a industry use case, Oracle, I mentioned, has sort of disaggregated BFSI. There's a separate insurance piece. There's a separate piece focused on financial services. This is the piece that is focused on banking. Oracle is bringing together all the modules, including all the acquisitions that Oracle has done, and forming its core banking offering. You can see on the lower level of the slides, the physical infrastructure, be it hardware, network storage, all the way towards the right to OS admin. The next layer is the system software, the monitoring tools, the schedulers. And then you have the actual banking software modules, be it market enterprise systems, be it platforms, product processors, governance, risk and compliance, digital engagement, experience and digital services. Now, all of this is cobbled together, and I repeat the word cobbled. And this is why what we are saying is buyers that are going to go in for, particularly if you're a bank, please beware of what you're consuming and what you're signing up for. And let's double click on some of this. So Oracle FlexCube product owes its heritage to Microbanker. Microbanker was a product that Citibank generated out of its subsidiary in India called CITIL, C-I-T-I-L. CITIL divested, and that became iFlex Solutions and was listed at some point in time. Oracle Financial Services announced in 2006 that they would do an acquisition of Mantas, which was an anti-money laundering software, which also had a direct relationship with iFlex. There's a whole history about how Microbanker evolved, and now Microbanker is part and parcel of Oracle Financial Services and part of Oracle's banking offering globally. Right. So we've talked a little bit about banking as a use case. We have Oracle FlexCube Universal Banking. We have Oracle Banking Digital Experience, right? So on the left side, the focus is to drive enhanced user engagements, improve insights, enable rapid and secure integration, offer multiple transformation paths, and support multiple deployments. You will see the IT portion in the gray areas, enterprise applications, enterprise class, and you will see the banking specific points in business services, in the framework capabilities and common services, in the digital engagement layer, and more importantly, in the product processor layer, be it deposits, lendings, cards, trade finance, liquidity, and virtual account management. So from a package perspective, it seems like a pretty consolidated composite offering, but when you start double clicking, you will see that there is a lot more to the product, and you've got different modules from different heritages, which in itself is not a bad thing, but you have to be very careful that they will not be best in class in all areas. Buyer beware. Right, very important. So you've seen about a 20-minute presentation, 22-minute presentation on, first of all, Oracle's journey so far, or thus far, where they and their SI partners are pushing the boundaries, a use case in banking, an example that we observed in the marketplace with BJ Associates. We also have, at 6,000 feet, a structure which will allow you to use this as a checklist. And obviously, this will be followed by a far more detailed session, which my colleagues will run in Feb. So you can look at the next level of detail on this particular topic. Right. So first of all, if you're going to buy Oracle or use Oracle going forward, you need to be very clear on your digital strategy. You need to be very clear on where you're going to use Oracle. It's essential. You then need to understand your technology. Are you looking at a SaaS, software as a service platform, or is this a mixture of on-prem and cloud? You also then need to understand the competitive landscape. Are you looking at Oracle only as a short-term measure, and you're going to swap out Oracle products with other competing products? Then you need to understand, if you're currently using Oracle, what your license optimization analysis indicates. And ISG is rightly placed to help you here, whether it's an underusage or an overage. You then need to understand what's the commitment structure. If it's a net new purchase, are you going to buy upfront versus buy on demand versus a 3-year commit? Then you need to be able to understand what Oracle's sales rep thinks of you from a revenue potential. This is critical because the Oracle sales rep will have a dollar, euro, relevant currency figure in his or her mind. Then you look at the commercial terms. Is it a la carte, more bespoke approach? And then you start looking at your requirements. And that's how you craft your Oracle specific strategy. And I haven't seen a single large enterprise that can do this in-house consistently, which is why ISG is more than well positioned to help you with this particular exercise. So with that, I see Bill Huber in the camera, and I see Jillian in the camera. Jillian and Bill, over to you.
Thanks, Yadu. Yeah, it's time for Q&A, and if you have not submitted yours yet, you can still do so using the Ask a Question box on the left side of your screen. So with that, we'll go to our first question, which is, we reduced our Oracle spend in 2020, and in December, We received a letter from Oracle indicating their intent to audit our software environment. How should we respond?
I'll take that one, Jillian. Thank you. So if you've not already replied, the first thing you need to do is acknowledge receipt of the letter, right? So you need to sort of be a good citizen. Let Oracle know that you've received their request, you take it very seriously, and that you intend to make sure that there is good accuracy and transparency in any audit. And so you are going to assemble a team to address any of the questions and areas that they've mentioned in the audit. Having said that, it's very important that you understand your own environment and that you prepare yourself so that you don't just give free access for a fishing expedition. So you need to make sure that as you reply back to Oracle, you are very clear on what the scope of the audit's going to be, what resources they'll need access to, what environments they're going to look at, how they're going to measure it. And once they do that, you need to work with your stakeholders to prepare for each of those. We frequently work with our clients when they are facing an Oracle audit. The important thing is that you don't want anything misleading to get out there ahead of time. So you do want to be very careful and controlled with your communication. You do want to involve your legal team as well as someone who's an expert in handling Oracle audits. And the important thing is just to very carefully manage the pace and the communication flow with Oracle so that it's all done in a very carefully managed manner. And we'd be happy to speak with you further offline if you'd like to reach out to either Yadu or myself.
All right, thanks, Bill. And our next question is, I'm interested in what you said about Oracle's banking platform. Are there any key issues I should consider from a cost perspective when looking at banking platforms?
Let me take that, Jillian. Yes, the biggest issue that you have to look at is your existing legacy estate. Very rarely have we seen a tier 1 or even a tier 2 bank strip out their existing core banking system and replace it lock, stock, and barrel with an Oracle suite. So you have to understand the business case. You have to understand the customer segment that you're going after. We've seen instances of dual core where the legacy is a mixture of products, but for the millennial audience, for example, the front end could be from someone like a Google Pay or even Oracle product, and the core banking product is from Oracle, providing only checking and credit features. You could have another instance where you may replace the GRC module with a third-party product or something from the Oracle ecosystem. So depending on the vector you're looking at, you will have different scenarios from a cost perspective. The second most important aspect that you have to look at is the function of what happens, who does maintenance, right? What happens if you add another 1 million customers? What's the impact on the product? All that has to be worked through. And third, and finally, you have to understand whether the price per account from a legacy system versus the new core, if that's comparable, and whether it's actually worth the effort. Back to you, Jillian.
Thanks, Yadu. Okay, next question. When thinking about Oracle's competitive environment, who are some of the primary competitors I should think of for some of Oracle's products?
Okay.
Yadu, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. Jillian, is it okay if we flip back several slides?
Sure.
Right. So let's look at industry solutions. Salesforce, SAP, right? These are the names that come right up front. If you start looking at even more nuanced areas, you have all the other tier 2 software providers that would compete directly with Oracle. Now let's look at industry solutions. There are a whole host of other specialized product providers. For example, in insurance, you have Guidewire, right? In life sciences, you have R&D providers. They may still use an Oracle database, but they have the full stack, and the only addition or input that Oracle has is there. You have utilities providers, right? You have a full suite that SAP now has. Financial services, Accenture, which is a big Oracle SI, and Broadridge have a joint venture which looks at financial service markets, right? A lot of Oracle's own SIs have their own products that sit and target the financial services market, be it capital markets. And you have the likes of Dassault and others who focus on manufacturing and can push very hard, when it comes to bringing value for money. The next level is on the ERP layer. You have SAP, you have QAD, you have a whole host of other ERP solutions, right? And then we come into cloud apps, and this is where the market is very crowded. It's not just the Salesforces of the world, but a whole host of other providers, including hyperscalers that have done secret strategic investments in some of these post-Series A Silicon Valley type to-be unicorn companies. So very complex question. Bill, I'm sure you have a lot more to.
Yeah, just to add a few more things. So, databases, Oracle has been king for forever, right? And just last year, SAP, went live with some major press releases about doing a SuccessFactors migration without using any Oracle databases and doing them all within SAP databases. So we're starting to see some significant penetration even around Oracle's core database businesses. Other companies in the business app sides that are really taking off, Workday and ServiceNow are both beginning to move upstream into the ERP segment and into the financial segment. If you think about Oracle's previous position in HR technology, they have they've been losing a lot of ground to both Workday and SuccessFactors. So it's important, and the reason all of this is important is when you're renegotiating with Oracle, you most likely have a very complex Oracle environment in your organization. You're probably not just buying a single product. So it's important to understand, even if you don't have competition around the main product that is, that's central to your negotiation, understanding some of the other product areas where there are competitive options and understanding what your path might look at if you are not perfectly satisfied with performance on those kinds of conversations can become a very powerful incentive to constructing a much more favorable win-win deal with Oracle. So just make sure you understand the market dynamics, not just for the core things that you're negotiating, but for all of the elements of your Oracle footprint, and think about how you could perhaps position them in the strongest possible way.
All right, thanks, guys. Next question is a great one. Do you have any guidance for customers that are already in a PULA or ULA with Oracle? For example, how important is software asset tracking today when the contracts are in place for 5 to 10 years?
Okay, so software asset tracking is always important, and for different reasons. So if you are at end of EULA or end of PULA, you need to go through a certification process, which will then determine what products you have the right to use under your ongoing maintenance, and which will lock in your maintenance costs for those products. So having a very strong handle on that environment through strong software asset management capabilities is going to really put you in a much better position in terms of maximizing the value of your Oracle investment. There's also a good likelihood that even if you have a EULA or a PULA, that not every single Oracle product is within the scope of that. It's very common for our clients to go in and assume that everything is included, that they've negotiated previously and discover that they're being audited because a particular product that they've been using was not actually incorporated into the EULA and therefore is still subject to, traditional licensing metrics and utilization and so forth. So I'd say irrespective of whatever construct you have, you want to monitor very carefully. That'll give you the ability to manage, to be in control, and in the event that you do need to change directions in terms of your architecture and your overall strategy, having that information readily available is going to be very important as well.
All right. Next question. What are salient points of concerns or things to watch out for in the two legals you presented earlier?
I'm sorry, salient points to watch out for in the
two legals you presented earlier.
Yeah. So let's just move into
Yeah. I mean, there are a number of typical Oracle licensing things that you need to look at. So, for example, from a legal and audit perspective, so the terms of your agreement may be such that you have granted certain rights to use your licenses in conjunction with work that's being performed on behalf of a client, and the client may have certain rights to access of some of that data, but there are also typically restrictions on that use. So you need to understand what those restrictions are and make sure that you have the right controls and measures in place to ensure that they stay in compliance. Sometimes some of those things are also somewhat subjective to interpretation. So we'll often find that these issues will enter into a gray area. So don't simply take Oracle at its word that there is a compliance issue on usage. Make sure that you look and find any correspondence, any clarification, at the time of contracting where you defined or described the way that you were going to use it, and any assurances or guidance that you may have received from the Oracle or from any supplier. This is not to pick on Oracle during that process, because that becomes very important in interpreting it. There's also a unique Oracle provision called availability for use. So sometimes with some of their products, if it is inadvertently installed and therefore available for use, then Oracle will assert a claim that because it was available, you do owe money for the cost of that license. So, that goes back to another reason for very strong SAM practice to make sure that you understand the availability for use paradigm and that you are tracking anything that is not included within your EULA to make sure that that is not appearing on any of your servers in your environment. Yadi, anything else you'd add?
Absolutely, Bill. In the example of BJ Associates, BJ Associates was using real application clusters. The option for that, again, you have to be very careful without having a real application cluster license. And the salesperson from Oracle will not tell you this, but using an RAC requires an enterprise edition license, even though what you had paid for was only a standard edition. When this became apparent to BJ Associates, they simply refused to speak to Oracle. Oracle then flagged them as a willful infringer, making them subject to triple damages. So you have to be very careful with your contracts. Bill's already mentioned about software asset management, software tracking, and you have to be very careful on how you use your Oracle licenses. Are they being used for the purpose which was stated in the contract? Bill?
No, I think that answers it nicely. Jillian, any further questions?
Yes. If we think our current terms do not reflect the benefit we need, can we approach Oracle to open up the agreement and renegotiate?
it could be difficult. It really depends on what incentive Oracle has to renegotiate with you. So if you are in the middle of a term, and depending, of course, on the nature of your agreement, if it's, on-premise software, they've already recognized the revenue for the full licenses, and they're only accruing revenue for additional year-over-year maintenance as that occurs. So there's no incentive for Oracle or for any software publisher to go back and reverse revenue recognition. I think any of you who, understand financial markets would know that that would not be received well, in Wall Street. So the way to reopen a negotiation with Oracle is, really a couple-fold. One, if you have a mature environment and perhaps you're just in maintenance, you could look potentially at third-party maintenance options for most of your Oracle environment. Those have become much more mature. In a lot of cases, they're a very viable thing to consider. Second thing to consider is just in a normal environment, you will probably, continue to acquire small quantities of additional licenses from time to time as your estate grows. And if you do a better job in terms of optimizing your deployment across the existing licenses, if you practice better software asset management techniques, you can probably find better ways to redeploy, optimize your portfolio, and avoid making additional purchases. So when you do that, and when Oracle sees that you are able to better manage the environment, sometimes they can come and try to find a way to sweeten the pie to get you to buy more. Third thing is, of course, Oracle is very interested in migrating to the cloud. So if you are on-prem and they've approached you in terms of moving some of your on-prem products to a SaaS market or to a SaaS type of environment, that is certainly a way to open up and renegotiate with Oracle, but you need to be very, very careful with the metrics that will be in place and run the financial analysis very carefully. You need to look carefully at when you're going to terminate maintenance on your existing licenses and make sure that workflow or cash flow dovetails nicely with how you're going to deploy and migrate workloads into the Oracle Cloud environment. If you do all of those things well, you can often get some other concessions and also make your business case strong. But if you're not going to do anything, if you just have a steady state environment and you're just trying to renew maintenance, you're not willing to look at third-party maintenance, or you're just in the middle of an agreement and you're trying to get a rebate against licenses you've already paid for, you're not going to be very successful.
Thanks. And it looks like we do have one more question. Is Oracle aggressively pushing on Java licensing for commercial use?
Yes, and that's a very, very interesting area, a little bit too detailed to get into here, but there is quite a bit of unsettled legal opinion on their ability to push for additional revenues for the commercial Java licensing. So we'd be happy to do a follow-up call with anyone who's interested and kind of get into it. It's probably a 15-minute conversation just to go through the basics.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill and Yadu, and thanks everyone for joining today. This does conclude our time. As mentioned, the recording of this webinar will be available at the same link you used to register for the event. And if you have any questions or would just like to get in touch, you can find us at www.isg-one.com. Thanks for joining.